Hello guys, welcome. Welcome to this awesome alignment yoga session. Today might be a little bit different than your standard yoga experience that you're used to. Be a little bit less flowy, but we are really, let me adjust my leggings here, going to focus on alignment. If you've been lifting weights in the gym, you're used to lifting very heavy or very quickly for time. Or you're just used to pumping some weights to build some muscle. We're going to use this session to get your joints in proper alignment, to get your muscles activated, and through that activation, be able to actually give permission to some of your tight muscles to let go, let you move a little bit more freely today. So settle in, join me whether you have a mat or not, have a seat on the floor, and let's get this started. We're going to start on our bellies in what might be called a tadpole position, sitting the legs out straight behind you, bringing the hands out in front of your head as though you're going to take a nap and set your forehead on those hands. Reaching the legs strongly back for the back of the mat. Internally rotating those hips, you'll notice that your heels might drop out to the sides. Feeling a release in the back of your hips. From here, bringing your awareness to your rib cage. If your front ribs, the bottom ribs are poking into the mat, taking a moment to tuck them in. Sometimes it helps to make a metal singer or cat vomit sound to help us tuck those ribs in. Releasing your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Releasing any remaining tension across your face and your jaw. And just feeling that breath flow in through the nose, down the throat, into the lungs. And feeling how each exhale relaxes your body. Releasing any gripping in the neck and shoulders, in the chest and the back, in the hips and the legs, and anywhere else that you find it. Breathing through your nose, pulling that breath in, feeling your lower abdomen, the space below your belly button, pressing into the floor. And just releasing with each exhale. Pulling that breath up from that lower abdomen into your upper belly and letting go. Pulling that breath up from your belly into your back and side ribs as though the ribs could expand towards the ceiling, to the left and right sides of the room. Letting go. Pulling that breath up from the belly into the back and side ribs. Feeling them fill up the space underneath your armpits. Letting go. Breathing in from the belly into the back and side ribs. All the way up to your collarbones. Feeling the collarbones lift and broaden from left to right. As you exhale, seeking to keep the rib cage open as the belly pulls in away from the floor. This is called flying up, or Uddiyana. This is our deep transverse abdominis contraction that allows that corseting action fully in from the belly into the back and side ribs, up into the collarbones, and as we exhale, keeping the ribs large as the belly pulls in. One more 3-part breath. Corseting on the exhale. And just sliding the hands back underneath the shoulders, wrist in line with the lower ribs as though we were going to do a push-up. Grounding through the ball mounts. That's where your fingers and your hands come together, the bottom side of your knuckles, the ball mounts of your pointer fingers. And digging the toes into the mat as though we were going to do a push-up. Contracting into the quadriceps, resisting them back into the hamstrings, feeling the knees lift off of the floor, feeling the heels reaching back strongly for the back of the mat. Slight internal rotation in the hips frees up space in the back of the hips, the sacrum. Lifting the shoulders towards the back body as though they could touch the ceiling, feeling the stretch across the chest and the collarbones. Resisting the front ribs in and breathing from the belly into the back and side ribs, all the way up to the sternum, and releasing, feeling this grounding in the hips from that quad lift, feeling the grounding in the shoulders from the shoulder lift, the stretch across the collarbones, breathing in, letting go. Breathing in, letting go, releasing the contraction in the shoulders and the legs, pointing the toes straight back, lifting the groins and the hips, grounding through the ball mounts of the fingers as the hips sit back over the heels into child's pose, balasana. Tucking those front ribs in, sitting back towards the heels, knees can be narrow or wide. Grounding through the ball mounts of the fingers, from the pointer finger to the pinky, and lifting the shoulders towards the back body as though we're pulling the armpits away from the floor, creating as much space under the armpits as possible, as though we're squeezing the shoulder blades up and back. Externally rotating the shoulders while keeping the ball mount of the pointer finger grounded, as though the elbows can point at the floor, and breathing. Belly, ribs, collarbones, and letting go. Core sitting the belly in, fully in. Letting go. Fully in. Letting go. Using that shoulder lift on our next inhale to pull us to hands and knees. Wrists underneath the shoulders, arranging the knees underneath the hips. Peering back through the legs, making sure that the feet are not visible. That takes internal rotation to a neutral hip position so that the feet are not pointing at each other. Grounding through the ball mounts of the fingers, ensuring that they are nice and grounded. Pressing through the pointer finger ball mount, feeling how that activates the front of the chest. Pressing through the pinky finger ball mount, feeling how that activates the back of the shoulders and even externally rotates the arms. Pressing the mat apart between the knees, feeling how that tilts the hips up, allowing the rest of the spine to follow. The sternum lifts into our cow position. Shoulders resisted towards the back body, elbows pointing towards the hips. Big inhale. As we exhale, squeezing the knees together, tucking the tail under, allowing the rest of the spine to follow into flexion into our cat. Vidalasana. Inhaling, reversing into cow, pressing that mat apart. Tailbone lifts, sternum melts towards the floor. Exhale, curling into our cat position. Inhaling cow. Exhaling cat. Feel free to introduce any side to side movement, any wiggles that feel good. Breathing in to cow. Breathing out to cat. Settling into a neutral position, tailbone lifted. That outward pressure of the knees lifts that tailbone, grounding the hips, imagining that we're pulling the leg bones into the hip sockets. Grounding through the ball mounts of the pointer fingers. Pulling the shoulders towards the back body. Resisting the front ribs in with our cat vomit metal singer sound. Stepping the right foot back while maintaining this alignment. The quad resists back into the hamstring, just as we did in our push-up prep position at the very beginning. hip in slight internal rotation. Left hip pushing down, slightly externally rotating, feeling that length in the left side body. Shoulders lifted back and up, feeling that stretch from the right heel to the right shoulder, from the left hip to the left shoulder. Big inhale. Big exhale, setting that right knee down. Finding our neutral position. Inhaling, stepping the left foot back. Exhaling, grounding that quad back into that hamstring, feeling that leg sit deep into that hip socket. Working the muscles of the left leg in internal rotation. As the muscles of the right hip push down, slight external rotation, feeling that length in the right side body. Shoulders lift towards the back body and up. Breathing length from the left heel to the top of the left shoulder. Length from the right hip to the right shoulder. One more breath. And releasing back to the mat with our exhale. Sitting back into our Balasana, child's pose. Actively, hips sit towards the heels. Knees can be wide or narrow, tucking the front ribs in. Grounding through the ball mounts of the fingers as the shoulders lift towards the back body to sit the arm bones into the shoulder sockets. Screwing them in with external rotation as though the elbows could resist towards the floor. Big breath in. Big breath out. Full inhale. Full exhale. One more breath. Keep the shoulders active. Using the strength of the shoulder lift to lift us back to hands and knees. Preparing for our full plank Palakasana. Finding our neutral position, pressing the mat apart between the knees, tailbone lifts, resisting the front ribs in, shoulders lifted towards the back body and up towards the base of the skull, grounding through the ball mounts of the hands as the right foot steps back long and strong, quad resisting back into the hamstring. The left leg steps back to meet it. Straight line from our heels to our shoulders, resisting the quads back, slight internal rotation opens the back of the hips. Tailbone is lifted, front ribs resisted in, shoulders lifted towards the back body, shoulders working in external rotation as though they could point towards the feet, head lifts, finding softness in the neck, big inhale, big exhale, Palakasana, plank pose. We'll stay here for the next 10 minutes. Just kidding, Bringing ourselves back to that 3-part breath. One more breath. Exhale, lowering the knees, keeping the tailbone lifted, the front ribs resisted in. Shoulders lifted towards the back body, allowing that shoulder lift to lower the sternum towards the floor through push-up and releasing to the floor. Resting just for a moment here. Knees grounded, shoulders lift towards the back body, stretching across the chest and the collarbones. Groins lift off of the floor, rib cage resists in. We float just off of the floor. The only thing in contact, the knees, the toes, the ball mounts of the hands and the palms. Using that lift to press us back to hands and knees. Pressing the mat apart between those knees. Tailbone lifts, ribcage resists in, shoulders lifted towards the back body, pressing the mat apart between the feet. The knees float off of the mat, the hips lift up and back towards the back corner of the room. Sitting back into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog, pressing the mat apart, knees slightly bent, tailbone lifts, feeling how the internal rotation in the hips broadens the back of the hips, the sacrum. Imagining we could pull the leg bones into the hip sockets, resisting the front ribs in. Shoulders lifted towards the back body, working an external rotation as though the elbows can point towards the feet, grounding through the ball mounts of the hands, feeling the activation in the shoulders. Big inhale, stepping the right foot up, reaching for the ceiling. Big exhale, steps the right foot forward, inside of your right hand, toes in line with the fingertips, left knee drops down to the mat, but we're not done yet. Left toes point straight back, pressing down into the top of the left foot to elevate the left knee, internally rotating that back hip, noticing the same quad and hip grounding we've practiced. Setting the left knee down, keeping that activation, resisting that left heel in towards your midline, feeling the hamstring and the underbutt, the high hamstring, activate. Right toes light as that right heel tugs back towards our right hip, sitting the right leg bone into the hip joint. Muscles of the right leg working external rotation, feeling the right hip light up. Keeping that leg activation, floating the hands off the floor, shoulders lift towards the back body. Shoulders externally rotate, inhaling to lift the arms and the torso up overhead. Big, long stretch. Exhale, tucking the rib cage in. 3 breaths, fully in, fully out. Rounded through the hips, fingers reaching for the ceiling, stretching the skin across the palms. And your next exhale, hinging from the hips, the pelvis tilts us forward, belly over the right thigh. Hands to the floor, left toe digs under, left knee pops up, stepping the right foot back to meet the left, pressing back into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana, pressing the mat apart between the feet, ribs resisted in, shoulders lifted up and back. Feeling a stretch as the hips traction up and the shoulders traction down, lengthening the inner body. Inhaling the left leg up, exhaling, stepping the left foot forward in line with the left fingertips hands, and grounding the right knee. Right toes point straight back, pressing down into the top of the right foot, internally rotating the right hip as the right knee grounds, keeping the activation in the right hamstring, resisting the right heel in towards the midline, feeling the underbutt activate. Left toes light as the left heel pulls back into the left hip. Left thigh muscles working in external rotation, shoulders lift towards the back body. Shoulders externally rotate, turning the palms out. Inhaling as the arms lift the torso up into an upright position. Exhaling, resisting the ribs in. Tractioning those hips to square the hips with the front of the mat. Fully in, fully out. Shoulders lifted, externally rotated, stretching the skin of the palms. Fully in, fully out. Exhaling to hinge ourselves forward over that left thigh. Hands plant, right toe digs under, right knee elevates, stepping the left foot back to meet the right into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Tailbone lifts, shoulders lifted towards the back body. Big inhale. Exhale, resisting the ribs in. Beginning to tiptoe the feet forward to the front of the mat as though they're coming behind the hands. And bringing the hands to your shins or thighs, or even keeping them on the floor into half forward fold. Uttanasana. Toes are light, resisting the heels apart, feeling how that lifts the tailbone, just as we did in cow. Checking to ensure that the knees are pointing straight ahead along with the toes. Hands to the hips, elbows squeezed together behind the back, feeling the stretch across the collarbones. Grounding through the ball mounts as the inhale lifts us torso to standing. Exhale, hands by the sides. Standing in this position, what we might call Tadasana, mountain pose. Toes are light, feeling how the weight of the hips shifts back over the ankles. Grounding through the ball mounts of the big toes. Feet are flat. Feet parallel, second and third toe That center line runs through them, straight back through the heels. Knees are soft, quads active. Poking the front of the hips, checking to ensure that your groins are soft, not hard. Shoulders lift towards the back body and up, feeling the rib cage lifted off of the hips, off of the diaphragm. Exhale, resisting the front ribs in. Shoulders work an external rotation to spin the palms out. Inhaling, the arms lift overhead. Stretching from the feet all the way to the fingertips. Exhale, resisting the front ribs in. Fully in. Into the back and side ribs, resisting the front ribs in as we exhale. Stretching the skin of the fingertips. One more breath. As we exhale, turning the arms out and bringing the hands down, or the arms down by the sides, resting in Tadasana Mountain. Quads still active, weight shifted back over the hips. Inhaling the arms back up overhead, grabbing your right wrist with your left hand, exhaling to a nice side bend, keeping the legs active, keeping the length in your side body. Fully in and back to center. Exhaling as we side bend to the opposite side. Inhaling back to center. Exhaling, taking a very slight back bend, keeping the length in the front and back body. I know you can go further, but we're going to keep our length. Inhaling back to center. Exhale, hands down by the sides. Resting in Tadasana, shoulders lifted back and up. Ribs are light. Inhale, the arms up overhead. Exhale, right side bend. Inhale, center. Exhale, left side bend. Inhale, center. Exhale, arms to a T, or arms, not harms. Resisting the front ribs in. Energizing through the fingertips, feeling how you can reach your arms even further away to the left and right side of the room. Big inhale. Exhale, from the rib cage, twisting to your right, keeping the hips right where they are. No movement in the hips, arms back to a T. Big inhales. Big exhale, feeling how each breath lengthens your spine. Each exhale twists you further. Inhaling the arms back up to center. Exhale as we twist to the left. Hips stay right where they are. Feeling how that rib cage, it does the twisting. Each inhale lengthens our spine. Each exhale twists us further. Inhaling the arms back up overhead. Exhaling the hands down by the sides. Resting. And the after effect of these postures, these asanas, you prepare for a little bit of work. Inhaling the arms up. Exhale as long and strong as we can get. Big breath in. Exhale, sitting the hips back, slight bend in the knees into Utkatasana, fierce pose, which we might call chair pose. Toes and knees pointing straight ahead. Feeling how slight internal rotation might broaden the sacrum, the back of the hips. Resisting the mat apart between the heels. Exhaling the rib cage in. Releasing tension in the neck, shoulders lifted towards the back body, stretching the skin in the fingertips. Inhale to stand. Exhale, hands return to the sides. Resting. Inhaling the arms back up overhead. Exhale, sitting back into our Utkatasana, fierce pose. Feeling the action of resisting the heels apart, how it broadens the sacrum. Exhale, resisting the front ribs in, shoulders lifted, working an external rotation as though the elbows and pinkies can point straight ahead. Breathing, releasing the tongue. Inhale to stand. Exhale, returning to Tadasana, hands, arms by the sides. Noticing the after effect of all of that fierce extension. One final time, inhaling the arms up. Exhaling, sitting back into our Utkatasana, fierce pose, resisting the heels apart, feeling the sacrum left, resisting the front ribs in, full extension of the spine, shoulders lifted back, externally rotating, big inhale. And as you exhale, continuing the hinge from the hips, as we fold forward into Uttanasana, forward fold, resisting the heels apart, keeping the lift in the sacrum. Hands to the thighs or the shins or even blocks if you have them. Shoulders still lifted towards the back body. Inhaling length from the tailbone. Hello, spider. There's a spider hanging on him. Hey, buddy. From the tailbone all the way down to the top of the head. Shoulders lifted. One more breath. Exhale, releasing. See if we can fold even further. Hands to the hips, squeezing the elbows together behind the back, feeling the broadness across the collarbones. Inhaling to stand. Exhaling, returning to Tadasana. Resting in the after effect. Inhaling the arms overhead. Exhaling, sitting back into Utkatasana, fierce pose, into our chair. Right foot heavy, left foot light as that left foot steps far back across the mat, grounding through that back heel only as far as we can go while keeping that back heel down. Left leg in internal rotation, just as we practiced on our kneeling position. Big inhale, big exhale, lunging into that right knee. Right heel tugging back into the hips, left hip working internal rotation to square the hips with the front of the room. Left quad strongly resisting back into the hamstring. Left toes are light as in Tadasana, inhaling the arms, reaching for the ceiling. Exhaling, resisting the rib cage in. Feeling that tractioning in the hips like we're closing a pair of scissors. One more breath, grabbing our left wrist. Exhaling, slight right side bend, keeping the hips anchored, feeling that left side body open and stretch. Inhaling back to center, arms up, exhaling, arms to a T, using that rib cage twist to twist us to the right over our right thigh. Nothing changes in the hips. Reaching the arms long and strong to touch the front and back of the room. Inhaling length, sternum lifts. Exhale, reaching those fingers. Inhaling, twisting back to center, arms back. Exhale, beginning to hinge forward from the hips, returning the left foot next to our right into fierce pose, Utkatasana. Inhaling to stand. Exhale, hands rest by the sides. Clean any spiders off of you if you got them. Hey, bud. Get down to the floor. Inhaling the arms back up. Exhaling into Utkatasana, fierce as we prepare to take this on the other side. Resisting the front ribs in. Left foot heavy, right foot light. Inhaling, lifting the right knee. Exhaling, stepping the right leg back. Grounding through the right heel. Internally rotating that right hip. Right toes pointing straight ahead. Left toe is light, grounding the big toe and the pinky toe. Left heel pulling back into that left hip. Tractioning. Right hip internal, left hip external. Squaring the hips with the front of the room. Inhale tall. Exhale to resist the front ribs in. Lunging deeply into the left knee while maintaining grounding on the right heel. Inhale tall. Exhale, ribs resist in. Once more, fully in. Letting go. Grabbing our right wrist, big inhale. Exhale, side bend to the left, slightly keeping that traction in the hips. Fully in. Fully out. One more breath. Inhaling the arms up to center. Exhale, arms to a T, using the rib cage to twist us to the left. Open arm twist. Inhaling, lengthen the spine. Exhaling, using that exhale to twist us even further. Fingers reaching for the sides, the front and back of the ring technically. Shoulders working in external rotation. Sternum lifted. One more breath. Inhaling to return to center. Exhale, beginning to hinge in the hips. Right foot comes back to the left, front of the mat into Utkatasana, fierce pose. Inhaling to stand. Exhaling, arms return to the sides. Resting in the after effects of this practice. Inhale, arms towards the ceiling. Arms lift. Exhale, sitting back into our Utkatasana, fierce pose, finding that broadness across the sacrum. Big inhale. Exhale as we begin to hinge even further from the hips into Uttanasana, forward fold, resisting the mat apart between the heels. Hips and internal rotation to lift and sink the sacrum in. Every inhale lengthens our spine. Every exhale resists the front ribs and the belly in, sinking us even further into this forward fold. Resisting the urge to pull ourselves in. When we find intense stretching in the hamstring, just backing out of it slightly, finding activation on the opposite side in the quads, using that reciprocal inhibition to release the hamstrings, the stretch. One more breath. Exhale, grounding the hands, bending into the knees, sternum lift, stepping back into plank, back into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog, tailbone lifts, breathing. Keeping that spinal alignment, lowering the knees to the floor. And making our way to our butts. Actually, I like staying on hands and knees. From hands and knees, wrists planted beneath the shoulders, knees beneath the hips, stepping the right foot back into plank, and then the left Palakasana. Right knee slides forward behind the right wrist, left heel underneath the groin, working that right hip in external rotation, only as far as you can get that right shin without grabbing it and moving it. Now, if you were the most flexible person alive, this shin angle would be 90 degrees, but I'm not there, and you might not be either. Allowing the left knee to come down to the floor, left toes point straight back, pressing into the top of the left foot, internally rotating that left hip, rounding that left knee, that left hip squaring with the front of the room, and that right hip tugs back. Feel length in the right and left sides of the body, popping to the fingertips, shoulders lifted towards the back body. Big inhales, big exhales. Lunge with external rotation, otherwise known as pigeon pose. Maybe you can sink deeper into that right hip while those hips stay square with the front of the room and the mat. Feeling that right hip working strongly to externally rotate, to tug into the hip. That left groin still deep. You can even poke it to ensure that it stays soft. Fully in, fully out. Rounding through the ball mounts of the pointer fingers, left toes dig under, left knee elevates, Stepping the right foot back to meet the left. In plank, Palakasana, tailbone lifts, ribcage resists in. Left knee behind the left wrist, working that left hip and external rotation. Maybe the left ankle can come to the right wrist. Right knee grounds, right toes poke straight back, sliding that right hip back just slightly. Resisting that left hip back and external rotation. Resisting the right hip and internal rotation, grounding the quads into the hamstrings. Squaring the hips with the front of the room and to the mat. Shoulders lift towards the back body. We can even pop up to our fingertips, getting that length from hips to spine to head. Fully in, fully out. Maybe the fingers can even lift. Maybe we can slide deeper into this stretch. Muscular sensations only. If we feel anything in the joints, we are pushing too hard. That muscular activation. Grounding through the ball mounts of the pointer fingers, right toes dig under, right knee elevates, stepping the left foot back, strong into Palakasana plank. Grounding through the fingers, shoulders lifted towards the back body. Resisting, quads back into the hamstrings, tailbone is lifted, front ribs resisted in. One more breath. Exhaling, lowering the knees to the floor. And now, making our way to our butts. On our booties, heels pulling towards the hips. Laying down flat on your back. In a nice bridge position, preparing for Setubandha. Setubandhasana. Rounding across the big toe to the pinky toe ball mount and the heel. Lifting that tailbone so that we have that small gap underneath the lower back. Grounding heavily through the hips, even wiggling the shoulders away from the hips. Shoulders externally rotate, turning the palms up, pressing down with the shoulders so hard that that spine begins to lift. Pressing from those shoulders to lift the hips towards the ceiling into Setubandha bridge. Feeling the hips traction away from the shoulders, lengthening the spine. Feeling the work in the shoulders and the back as we are in this slight baby back bend. Neck is released. Chin can lift slightly, sternum lifted. Inhaling. Exhaling, groins soft, ribs resisting in. Fully in. Fully out. Releasing the tongue from the roof of your mouth and just holding. Noticing where the body goes. Where the mind goes. Anything you feel compelled to do, any emotions. Remembering the phrase neti, 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 I am not this mind, I am not this body, I am not this thought. I am pure awareness. I choose my own thoughts, my own words, my own actions, and I choose to hold this posture. Setubandha. One more breath. Exhaling gently, lowering the hips, keeping the spinal alignment back to the mat. Sending the legs out long beneath you. Reaching the legs out long and strong, reaching the arms up overhead with a big inhale. Big good morning stretch. exhale, bringing the arms by your sides, allowing the legs and the arms to come to rest as we settle into our final relaxation pose, Shavasana. The only time that you are allowed to be comfortable. Closing your eyes. Taking a big inhale from the nose. Releasing to the mouth. Fully in. Fully out. Fully in. Fully out. Releasing any remaining tension across your brow and your jaw, and even the tiny muscles around your ears. As the ear canals relax and deepen towards the back of your mouth. Releasing the tongue from the roof of your mouth as that soft palate expands upward towards the top of your head. Feeling the air flow through this empty space, down into your lungs. And how every exhale releases any remaining tension, filling the body with warmth in your neck and shoulders. And your shoulders down through your upper arms into your elbows. And from your elbows all the way down to your fingertips. Down through your chest and your back, warming and releasing the muscles of your abdomen, and down into your hips. That release flowing down from the hips through the upper legs, the quads, the hamstrings, down into the knees. And from the knees down through the shins and the calves, all the way down into the ankles. As the feet fill with this relaxing warmth. Allowing your body and your mind to go wherever it is that they need to go. Bringing your awareness back to your body, giving yourself permission to land in your body. Whenever you are ready, allowing that breath to breathe life back into the muscles, beginning to wiggle through the fingers, the toes, the hips, and gently rolling to either side, right or the left, into a fetal position, resting your head on your bottom arm, feeling the body sink heavy into the mat, feeling the breath in the top side ribs. And only when you are ready, using the strength of the arms, maintaining the spinal position to bring yourself to a seated posture. I hope that you feel long and strong, and remember that as in our asana practice, so as in our lifts and in our lives, we intend to take it easy, to embrace any experience we have in our body and around us, to accept that whatever occurs is absolutely okay, that it's a learning opportunity. We'll do the best that we can with it today. Wherever our body is at, it's a-okay. Surrendering our attachment to any desired result, outcome, lift, performance, any expectation of the way that things should be, and yielding to what we get, doing the best that we can with what we have, where we are right now in this practice, in this lift, in this life. In Sanskrit, Shanti means peace. I say Om Shanti, Shanti, Shantihi to you. The yogis believe that all of us carry one little aspect of that spark of the Big Bang, and to denote that we say that the light within me recognizes the light within you. Om Shanti, Namaste. Thank you all for practicing today. I love you, and I hope that you like this, and if you do, I'll make more. Have an amazing day.